My name is Steve Foreman. I'm going to start this painting out by blocking out the geometric shapes, the basic shapes of the painting, and blocking out the image and how I want the painting to go with basic colors. This is kind of my underpainting. And I always start my paintings out by making an underpainting. Some people tone their paintings. They put an overall tone on their whole white canvas. I don't do that. What I tend to do is use my tone. I tone the painting as I'm doing the underpainting. And I'm basically sketching out the drawing or sketching out the paint and basically drawing with the paint and laying out my image that I want to actually embellish at later stages. So I'm going to do the blocking out stages now. So bear with me. And I like to block out the background first and then work to the foreground. And in a city scheme with a little bit of graffiti thrown in. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to block off the painting starting with the background and basically sketch in the details of the painting with the paint. Okay? This is basically my attempt of toning, I guess, a canvas that is white before I actually start getting into the detail. Galk it. Just galk it regular, not galk it light. Galk it light leaves a brush stroke. This doesn't leave much brush stroke. I want this to be relatively flat. So that's why I selected this medium, because this is going to be my underpainting. So I don't really want any impasto or any texture at this moment. Just really want to sketch in with the paint. Okay, here I'm blocking out the painting. Basically toning down the painting, putting down the first coat, which is going to allow subsequent coats to go in a whole lot easier and smoother. Generally this layer is going to be translucent to semi-opaque, and the whole idea here is just to get the canvas less absorbent of the oil paint. When I'm blocking out the canvas, what I'm trying to do is basically get rid of all of the plain white areas and basically separate my canvas into various geometric shapes. It makes it very much easier to visualize my composition and to realize where everything is going to sit inside of the frame of the canvas, inside of my composition. In essence, what I'm doing in this particular step of the painting is I'm composing the whole shot. I'm basically laying out the painting and I'm making adjustments and realizing just where everything is going to reside within the composition. So I take my time doing this part because this is the building blocks of the painting, where you're going to make sure your foreground is where it's supposed to be or where you want it to be. Your background is where you want it to be. Any extra peripheral, any extra elements that's in the composition is harmonious and looks good. And you kind of work out all of your geometric composition in terms of exactly how all of the lines are going to converge and all of the shapes are going to converge and interact with each other. Also, what I'm trying to do at this point is to I generally would go and I'll sketch this out with a very dark color with some burnt umber. Sometimes I mix a little bit of the burnt umber with some green viridian, and sometimes I mix it with some cobalt blue or some ultramarine blue, depending on whether I want it cool or if I want it warm. In addition to that, after I get these darks mixed in, sometimes I also use a little Mars black. I would mix in a little Mars black if I want the tones really dark and very rich. But once I get my darks, I like to establish the painting, the composition with my dark tones. Again, using that burnt umber with either ultramarine blue or viridian green or with Mars black. And then I start going in with the yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and some raw umber, and start adding my warm tones and my middle tones. And then eventually I'll start working up to my light tones. I'm basically looking for about 3 to 4 stages of gradation at this point. I'm not really trying to paint all of the various little blends and all the different tones. I'm really just focusing on about 3 to 4 different tones
in the warm colors that's basically popping away from the darker, richer tones that I have as the background tones. So basically what I call a base tone. Those dark tones is what holds the eye in and hold the composition together. And the light popping tones is what attracts the eye, just for that place that I want them to look at that point. And I'm using the geometry to help lead the eye through the composition, forward, backwards. I try to go for like a triangle shape, or I use the angles, as you can see here in this composition, the fingers and arms and angles of their pose and the angles of the perspective is used to lead your eye in certain directions and throughout the actual composition of the painting. Also, what I'm doing is I want to get the whole canvas covered with color, with paint. I don't want any white sections left, and I just want to address every single white section of the canvas until I have the whole canvas covered with paint and toned, and basically brought to very close to, as close as I can, to quickly get in the image and get it as close to the tone and the shapes that I really am looking for. In addition to that, in addition to trying to get the canvas so that it is completely covered with oil paint, I am starting to look at details a little bit more now in certain areas and starting to make certain decisions, maybe paint over some areas that I'm having second thoughts about. Also do use some reference photos that maybe I print out on a laser printer or something like that. Also, I try to back off of it and just give my own interpretation. I don't like to really fully interpret a photograph because I feel like my brain, my soul, whatever I paint and whatever I'm feeling at that moment, I can breathe life into that image that I'm making over and beyond what a camera can take of that image. I try to put some type of my own feeling of my own humanity into the images that I create, and give the images more of a soul. Give it some spirit. Make it a mood that I'm trying to create. When a person views the image, they actually going to come under some type of they're going to feel some kind of way about it. They're going to get a sense of my expression of what I'm trying to think of, my soul, what I'm thinking about that image. So I start addressing some of that at this stage of the painting. I reference photos, but then I also use my own imagination and my own mind's eye, my own dreamscape eye, to create an image that only exists in my mind. Even if I'm referencing some popular figures, like in this case, Nipsey and Tupac, it's my version of them. It's what I see them as. So that's very interesting. And also the message, whatever message I'm trying to, whether it's subliminal, whether it's obvious or direct message, I'm thinking about the messaging of the painting as well. So at this stage, I'm coming up with as many visual ideas as I can, and I'm trying to sketch those things in, so to speak, at this level, and paint them in, actually, not just sketch them in, but to somehow make notes of that. So then at another stage, I can get more details and actually literally paint those or create those illusions. Okay, also at this point, I tried to add some impasto to my painting texture, brush strokes, leaving brush strokes in. That's what separates the painting from the photograph. It's the fact that when the spectator sees this on the wall, they're going to respond to the texture of the paint, the various depths and thicknesses, the presence of the paint actually sitting on the surface of the painting. So I start to make decisions on what elements are going to have a heavy, thick impasto in terms of um, physically popping away from the flatness of the canvas. How thick is that brushstroke going to be? What type of texture is going to be? Is the texture going to follow the shapes? Is the texture going to be different from the shapes? Is the texture going to be flat? Is the texture going to be more shiny or more matte? I'm starting to make those kind of decisions about the paint at this level. Am I going to juxtapose these things? Less flat, less brushstrokes in the paint, more brushstrokes side by side and contrast of those things. So I started thinking about that. Also, I'm starting to get into more tones now. Probably I'm going from about 4 tones to about 8 and maybe to 10, 8 to 10 tones at this moment, especially when I would start working on the faces. You can see I'm working on Tupac's face. I'm trying to, work out all those tones in his face, the lights and the various darks. I'm also addressing at the same time, I tend to bounce back and forth between the foreground and the background, address the darks in the background as opposed to the darks and the lights in the face, how much separation I want from the foreground and the darks in the face and the darks in the background. So again, in addition to that, the textures of this, what textures I want. And I've made a decision already with the word revolutionaries at the top. I definitely want that to have a very, very heavy, thick brushstroke, heavy impasto, as heavy as I can get it. I'm going to probably mix some Galkit or Gamblin cold wax medium with this paint to get it as thick as I possibly can. Then some later date I'm going to oil in. And I may do another video showing how you oil in a painting, where I'm going to, if some of the brushstrokes turn out matte or not with a glossy finish, I might want everything to be more glossy or more satin or whatever. That is what I do in the oiling out stage, where I use about 50% stand oil and 50% Gamsol with my chemistry. Sometimes I might just put a little bit of Galkit in there just to speed up the dry time, but oftentimes I would do this horizontal. I would put the paint in the horizontal mode, and I would basically let that oil kind of soak in, and then I'll wipe it off. Then I'll leave that for about a week to set up. At some point, I'm going to work on the details, just how more realistic I want to make the painting. Do I want to leave the painting somewhat gestural? I want to paint it as, I'm not going to say photorealistic, but as realistic as I could. Sometimes when you paint more realistic, it causes the person to focus on that painting a lot. But then the painting starts to look like you're imitating a photograph. And I don't want my paintings to look like I'm imitating a photograph. I want my painting to look and exist as a painting, not as somebody who's imitating a photograph. So what I'm doing is, at this level, I'm starting to figure out, okay, what areas I'm going to leave a little bit more rough or gestural, and what areas I'm going to have more refined in terms of refining the image and making the illusion of an actual image or a photograph or a face more realistic or less realistic. So I'm kind of playing around with these particular thoughts at this level in terms of exactly how I'm going to develop, how much I want to actually develop various elements in the painting. Also, I'm thinking about color. You can see with the background I have like a blue green tint, and then in the foreground I have more of a warm color in the actual subjects. So these are just things that I start thinking about: color, the overall impact of the painting at this level. Okay, at this point, I'm doing the details, refining my images, refining my shapes, adding shadows, playing with the light composition in the drawing. Where's the light coming from? How is that illusion of geometry and light affecting the images, and just refining all that. Where the shadows not going to be, where the highlights are not going to be, those kind of things. So I start addressing that in a composition at this moment. And at this time when I'm doing this, generally the painting is basically taking its shape, it's taking its overall shtick or its overall impression. And all I'm trying to do at this point is heighten that impression somewhat. Um, Whether I'm being successful with that or not, I don't know. I generally just keep working through until things are revealed to me as I get a revelation about what it is I am trying to do. The painting is talking to me in terms of what it's calling for me to do to it or with it to make its illusion or make its image more vibrant, more present, more, it's like a dialogue going back and forth between me and the painting at this point, so I can feel like I have what I am looking for. So that's what I do towards the end of a painting like this, where I'm adding various little details. I'm working with the highlights and the shadows. I'm refining shapes, going in, and maybe some places where the paint's thin, I'm thickening it up a little bit, or where I want some translucent layers. I do tend to build in layers. As you can see, I have my undercoat layers where I was toning the painting. Then I put subsequent layers of similar tone mixed with more and more Gamsol and more Galkit. In this case, I painted this with Galkit mostly. I did experiment a little bit with mixing the Galkit and the linseed oil with the Gamsol. Just experiment with the drying times, because most of this painting was done in the warmer temperatures of the summer and the fall. And there you have it, the finished painting. All the details are painted in the way I want. It has a certain roughness to it, a certain non-refined image treatment to it, which I like. It adds to the roughness of the cityscape background, the roughness of the characters. And I appreciate you viewing this little piece I've made here about this painting. Like and subscribe and tune in to my other videos to see what I'm painting next. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.